Soraya.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Doing very well. Hey, do you remember when we did our first listen podcast and I played you three Vox bands?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Bands that you weren't super familiar with, as I remember.
That is correct.
Well, we decided that we wanted to do a little mini series and we actually reached out to those three bands that were on Vox. As you know, we just talked to members from the Pandoras,
Right.
from two different versions of the band, and they started off on Vox. But our next three episodes should be the bands from that first Listens podcast, and we're starting it off with who?
The Things.
The Things, yeah. So we've invited Steve Crabtree and Roy McDonald, who were original members of the band, to come on and talk to us about their time with the Things.
Roy McDonald, the Roy McDonald, drummer of the Muffs, the Roy McDonald.
Yes, him. And I've been listening to a lot of Red Cross lately, and he played with them for a while too. So.
You know what's really cool too is Steve Crabtree has this documentary available on YouTube, and the documentary is called "Not Everyone Makes It," and it's a really, it's a compelling documentary. It talks about his journey in music.
Yes.
And it's a very interesting story, lots of twists and turns, but you know, at the core of it is someone who's passionate about music and making music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so we highly recommend that, and I think we can probably add a couple of links when the episode goes live. But
yeah, we definitely should. And I mean, just the title of the documentary alone, "Not Everyone Makes It." I mean, it kind of he doesn't bury the lead, does he? I mean,
no, he leaves it out there, and I think that's what's such a draw is that he bears no bones. You know, Roy McDonald was a part of this band before leaving and moving on to other projects. So it's an interesting look at music business and bands and how things ebb and flow. So Jeff, I don't know, let's hop into it.
Let's do it.
Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff.
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme,
a podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a groovear.
Let's get groovy.
All right. So on today's episode, we continue to look at Vox recording artists, which we started with our conversation with the Pandoras, actually. And we've mentioned, or I've mentioned, that the VOXX label to me was kind of like a distant cousin of the Paisley Underground. So Roy and Steve, we primarily talk about the Paisley Underground, but I look at the VOXX artists as a related scene, right? Because you guys had this scene with bands from in the 80s, heavily influenced from music from the 60s. Not only the music, but fashion kind of crept into how you guys presented yourselves and the album covers and whatnot. But we had an episode a few weeks back, and it was a first listen episode for Soraya, where I picked some songs by The Things, The Telltale Hearts, and The Steps to play for Soraya, and we got her first reaction. So that was pretty fun. But we wanted to let our listeners know that today we're welcoming Steve Crabtree and Roy McDonald. You guys have done a lot of stuff before and after The Things, but today we wanted to primarily focus on The Things. So Steve, Roy, welcome to Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It'll be fun.
Steve, we want to start with you
Sure.
and ask about the origin of The Things. And in your documentary, Not Everyone Makes It, available in 2 parts on YouTube, and for our listeners, we are going to provide a link to that.
Great.
We learned that you were influenced by going to see Salvation Army.
I wouldn't say influence. I was blown away because we were kind of trying to do the same thing. But yeah, I was very enamored You know, it was affirmation that what we wanted to do was working for other people. And we were nobodies, and we couldn't even get a gig. And I go watch this band, and they got this audience and a following, and they came out dressed like the Monkees, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, you know. I was a big fan.
So, Roy, our question for you, we like to find out how the artists that we talk to get attracted to a certain instrument or certain craft. Can you tell us how you were drawn to playing the drums initially?
I always kind of gravitated toward the drums. A big record when I was a kid that I used to like to play along with was Sgt. Pepper. And I would take like pillow cushions, you know, and put them all around, and we had carom sticks. Remember the game caroms? So those big old, they weren't really pool cues, but they were like a smaller version.
Oh, okay.
And I used to take, you know, a couple of those and play along with it. So that was probably my earliest, you know, wanting to be a drummer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then seeing Kids Are All Right.
Oh, yeah.
Big influence. Just
wow.
seeing him perform. That was pretty influential, but it was something that I didn't really pursue until I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so was it like a high school band kind of thing?
Yep. Yeah.
And Steve, what about you, the guitar? What drew you to it, or when was your earliest
Well, you know,
onto it?
I often say I was only 2 months old, but when the Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show, I think it was just it was on in our house, and we had Beatle records growing up. I had an older brother and sister that had all those records, early Rolling Stones. I can't remember. I don't know how far back, but I played air guitar since I was really, really, really young. You know, I pretended to be a rock star. I actually started learning to play when I was 12, though.
Wow.
In middle school, we had a music class, and we started teaching kids guitar. You know, so we learned a few chords and took it from there. But I've loved that. I've just loved music since as far back as I can remember. You know.
Well, I want to talk about also, Steve, the songwriting process. As the band's songwriter, we're curious about your approach to songwriting. We've learned from other songwriters that we've talked to that there are a few different ways songs are written. Some start with the music first, some start with the lyrics, some are simply a result of experiences. So we want to know, how do
everything you've heard is true. You know, there's some come to you overnight. You know, some come in a dream. Some you work on for days and days and nothing ever comes out of it. Some start with a little riff. Working with the things, especially, so a lot of times I just brought in a song that I kind of thought was pretty much done, and then I let those guys do their thing, and then it would turn into something different. You know, so there's a million ways to do it. The key is to don't give up. Just keep doing it till it's done. You know, I know too many people that start a song and they ask for help, and then go finish it yourself, and do it that way. I'm very, as Roy probably can admit too, that I'm very protective. You know, if I don't like what they're doing, I'll say something. But I tried really hard to get. That came quick, huh?
Well, no, I mean,
I tried really hard to make it.
Collaboration is not easy, you know, and especially if you have this idea in your head and that's what you want to put out.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing about working with those guys is I wrote songs around those guys. You know, we were a 2-guitar bass drum band, and I had 3 guys that knew exactly what I wanted, especially with Roy. You know, and I don't know if I've told him this, but what I dug about his drumming is like Ringo. Ringo listened to John as a rhythm guitar player. You know, he played his hi-hat around the strum. Roy was one of the first, in fact, the first drummer that I actually listened to my strum on guitar. So anything I brought to rehearsal or practice, he picked up on right away, you know, just by watching me.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And thank you, but that's absolutely true because that's, I mean, Keith Richards always says the same thing, like that Charlie would play off of him. He wasn't really playing off of Bill Wyman. He was playing off of Keith. It's the same thing. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, we played a lot off of each other.
That's
I tend to do that. I tend to play off the guitarist, off the rhythm guitar
You still
more
do, yeah.
than necessarily the bass. Yeah.
that's unusual because usually you hear the rhythm section. It's the bass and the drummer locking in and step.
Well, you know, and a lot of drummers think that way, and that was the cool thing about work with Roy because he didn't. You know,
Huh.
that's if you really listen to the Beatle records, Paul sits on top while John and Ringo are kind of covering the whole rhythm section there. You know.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
very
yeah. Paul would quite often record the bass last.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. If he would sometimes record it last so that he could play, you know, because he's playing melodies over it. He's not necessarily playing, you know, a straight bass line. So he's, you know, he layers on top of the arrangement.
Wow, my mind's blown. Now I got to go back and listen to some, probably more so the
Well,
later period stuff.
And Steve and I would talk about this stuff. We geek out on like listening to songs, you know, and talking about like, isn't that cool how they did how, you know, how Paul did that, and you know, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
it informed what we did.
That's very interesting to me as a wannabe musician. I find that very interesting. Well, okay, so we wanted to start talking about the records, including I'm holding up the your first album, Colored Heaven. So this one was released in 1984 on VOXX Records. And Roy, can you tell us about the recording session, how that was going into record it? From what I understand, you guys went into Mel's Sound of Music and it was engineered by Tom Manassian, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, these are the demos that we basically made. We go in, I mean, and they were recorded at 2 different times because if I remember correctly, Steve, we went in and did about four songs, and then
Every time we learned maybe 4 or 5 songs, we'd go in and record them.
we'd go in and record it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of for ourselves, but they always sounded really good. And then we brought them to Greg thinking, we just want you to hear this stuff that we're doing. Well, actually, we brought it to Rodney first. That's what we did. We brought it to Rodney first.
Yep.
And he played it immediately. He played it like as we were driving home from dropping the tape off to him.
Wow.
And he answered the door, and which he didn't do later on. We were driving home and he played it and we couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
and from there, Greg Shaw contacted us and we started getting some gigs. He started arranging some gigs. We did that show at the Music Machine with the Pandoras and The Forgiven, I think. And it was like, I remember that one in particular. And we were talking about, we want to record a record. And he goes, well, I just think we should just put this one out.
Yeah, you know,
fashion.
they were low budget and our demos probably sounded a little bit better than a lot of the records they were recording in some of the studios they were using.
Yeah,
you know?
that's true.
Greg Shaw was pretty excited by those demos and just wanted to do that. And then promised us afterwards, we'll get this first record going, then I'll put you guys in a real studio and you can go record a real record, And that's what we did, second record,
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Those were demo tapes, that whole first album. And it was Pete, the bass player, was actually fired just days before we signed the contract. So he never even got to put his name on the record contract. We had hired Bob and Larry by then.
Yeah. And the last song on the record, Seems to Be Raining, was actually recorded in Steve's garage. So that wasn't even at a studio. Okay. We recorded that in Steve's garage on a pretty, would now be considered a pretty primitive 4-track.
Okay. 4-track cassette, yeah.
4-track cassette, and Rodney probably played that song more than any of the other songs on the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he said it had the Avalon Ballroom sound. That was his.
That's right.
So can you tell us about recording the demos? Was that also on a 4-track cassette, or was that on
8-track? Wasn't it?
That was an 8-track half-inch tape.
Okay.
It was actually pretty state of the art for the time. Mel, the guy that owned it was a music store, and he had a little recording studio in the back, and that's what he really wanted to do, is set up a recording studio. So he used his music store as a front, and he invested a lot of money in a really nice 8-track recording setup, you know. And we were one of the first people to actually go in there and start recording with him. You know, we were pretty green. We had no idea what we were doing. You know, we just went in there and we played the songs, and Tom set up the mics, and we go back in. And quite honestly, for me personally, no matter how it sounded, I was just excited to hear something coming out of the speakers, you know. So,
No, I mean, anything with any kind of fidelity, you know, I was like, oh my God, this sounds like a real, like a real record.
I don't think there were any take twos, you know.
No.
So did you guys did you do basic tracks first and overdubs, or was the demo just live?
We do live, the three of us, and then we go add guitars and the vocals last and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So was the intention to build up to an album as you're doing 3-4 songs in a row?
Well, you know what? I don't know that an album was it was just a matter of we were in a band and we just wanted to record. We wanted a record contract. We wanted all that stuff. But literally, when we first started out, we weren't gigging like the 3 o'clock in those kind of bands. We were struggling trying to find gigs. You know,
no, we were playing in like basements, opening up for like hair. You know, we were opened up for this hair band a couple of times in Whittier, was it?
Yeah, we couldn't get a gig to save our life. And Rodney Bingenheimer was really the one that kind of got the whole thing going. Once we got played on his show, he gave Greg Shaw the tapes. He was pretty excited about it. And next thing you know, we got this record contract, and we're starting to play gigs. And now that's kind of why we fired our original bass player. He was good and all, but Roy and I knew we could be better. You know? Yeah,
you know, we did it. I remember like one of our earliest things is we did a showcase at the Ice House in Pasadena. Remember that?
Yeah.
But that was like, you know, it was kind of like you know, you had the tickets that you had to sell, some of those, if I remember.
Yeah, it was on a Tuesday night.
You know, the first show was great. A lot of our family members were there. But we, you know, I still remember that as like a kind of a real gig. And I remember all those early ones, like, because it was just like, it was so new just to even gig, you know, it was anything, even those basement shows, you know, probably 20 people there, but there were a couple of cute girls, and you were playing, and it was exciting, you know.
Right. So, you got to remember too, we were 19, 20 years old, not just out of high school. You were still in high school, I think.
I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once we started doing shows, we did a lot of Madame Wong's East and mostly West though. And those were
brutal.
You know, we'd be on at like one in the morning on a Tuesday, and, you know, 10 people. And it was just, you know, we definitely paid dues, you know, at some of those.
That was a funny story. We were playing a Madame Wong's West on a Wednesday or Tuesday, really late, and they were literally, my brother and a buddy were the only people in the audience. And this girl Lori, who comes up to us afterwards, played nobody, and says, "Hey, Greg Shaw wants to sign you guys." It was a Spinal Tap moment, because we had no audience, you know.
Right.
And we're gonna get a record contract from that.
Yes.
You know, so yeah. Good time.
And did we didn't really know until we opened the box of the final albums what the album really looked like, right?
We had no idea. Yeah,
so
you don't like it either.
They didn't share the artwork with us, is what we're saying. Is yeah.
So we've watched the documentary, Soraya and I, and we kind of know. But can you tell our listeners? Yeah, can you share that for our listeners about this cover? I think they probably used the whole box of colored pencils, though.
Oh, and we used to, that was the joke, is we called it, instead of colored head, we called it colored pencil.
Well, you know, if you see the original photograph of those, big guys, right? It's got this beautiful blue sky, and it's just a really gorgeous picture. And when we get it back, we see these coloring marks, and you can't even tell that's the three of us on the front, you know. And then when they wrote everything out, I looked at it, I had to kind of, does that say the things colored heaven, and what does that really say?
Oh, the back? Yeah.
Yeah,
they overdid the psychedelic lettering to the point where it was illegible. You couldn't read it, you know. I mean,
and I remember asking him, and he's like, "Well, it's too late, man." I got more money.
We know it's too late now. Here.
That being said, I would like to tell you guys that I live down in Southern California, down near San Diego, and I lived real close to Encinitas. There was a record store down there called Lou's Records, and there was a record, Radio Tokyo tapes. That's the one that changed all my life. So that's when I started listening to LA bands. So after that, rather than looking at the Judas Priest, the Iron Maiden section, the Ozzy Osbourne section, I started looking in the independent section and flipping through those. And it was the covers that drew me in. And it was actually this cover of Colored Heaven that made me interested in buying it. I had no idea who the things were. It was before.
Well, you knew it wasn't going to be a metal record, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it had the VOXX record label icon on the back. So that, for me, anything that came out on VOXX, I knew would be kind of up my alley. So I understand what you guys are saying about the cover, but it was actually the cover is what attracted me.
That's good to hear. That's actually good to hear.
Yes.
And having said all that, we were just excited to have a record, period. So it was a complaint, but it didn't last very long. We were like, okay, let's just move forward, and let's, because we were excited, you know. So.
And we used to have that. I mean, I had that Radio Tokyo tapes album that you're talking about. That was, those are all those bands. Those are all the bands that we used to go see. Steve and I would go see 3 O'Clock all the time. Long Riders. The Bangles. We saw all those bands.
Yeah.
I always think it's weird to me when somebody says that a record changed their life. I think it seems kind of heavy-handed, and I know it's true in some cases, but that record actually changed everything. It was before then, everything had to be commercially viable and big. MTV stuff, again, like the heavier rock stuff, but that made me look at art in a whole new way. So independent film, independent visual artists, it was that record that it literally changed my life. So
Nice.
If it wasn't for that, the things would never have been in my radar. So
we knew that when we saw the 3 O'Clock at the Palace and it was sold out, and it was like going to see the Beatles, at the Cow Palace or something. Just something had changed, because this is a band that we had gone to see in clubs and clubs in Orange County, and then all of a sudden they're and that's what we kind of felt like, oh my God, there are other people out there who listen to the same stuff that we did.
Right.
We didn't really listen to the same music that a lot of our contemporaries at the time did.
Well, see, that was the cool thing about catching 3 O'Clock by accident that night. That I don't know. Were you with us? I know I was with Pete. Were you with us at the Roxy? You may not have been.
I don't know if I was. No.
We went to see the Plimsolls, and it was sold out. Roxy was sold out. But it was when 3 O'Clock came out and played, and by the time they were done, and maybe his life changed. I don't know, but I knew right then. I knew exactly what our band should. I wanted to do that anyway, but I wasn't quite sure. After seeing those guys, I was like, yeah, we can do this. I want to do this. I was a fan of all that stuff, and these guys were playing Feel a Whole Lot Better. Who else was playing that stuff? And they did Lucifer Sam. I thought I was the only guy on the planet that ever heard that song. Yeah. Suddenly these guys are doing it, and they're doing it in front of an audience, and the people were loving it. So yeah, that was I don't want to say life-changing, but it was a big moment for me. That's for sure.
So that gig was the 3 O'Clock opening up for the Plimsolls?
Opening for the Plimsolls at the Roxy. Yeah, maybe late 82, early 83, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I think I was at that show, because I went to that. I remember seeing the Plimsolls at the Roxy.
They were the Salvation Army, and they just changed their name right afterwards. I think that was their last Salvation Army gig or something.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question, because one of the things that we've noticed when we've talked to other bands is the importance of getting a song played on Rodney's show. And I find it really interesting how things started happening after Rodney. What is it that you think made Rodney have that impact on so many different bands? Because Roy, I like what you said, that I finally figured out that other people were listening to the sort of things that I was listening to, or that my friends were listening to. why is it that Rodney had his finger on the pulse of things that were going to change the music scene in LA and really have that impact for so long? Because people still refer to his influence now.
Roy?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's just because he takes a lot of chances on new bands and is very open to, and if he likes something, he will just play it. I mean, you hear about these DJs who, oh, I'm all free form and all that, and then they, you know, put on Pink Floyd, you know, something from The Wall, you know. He actually, you know, I mean, we gave him a cassette, we got in our car, we're driving back, and he played it. So, and you know, he hadn't even, you know, he might have listened to like a song before, you know, before he went on air and thought, oh, this is good, and let's put it on.
Right.
He did it all the time, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at the time too, he had prime time on Saturday, Sunday, 8 to 12, I think it was.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how I heard about him. I mean, I heard the name of Rodney on the Rock, but I don't know. I may have caught him one night and it was all this different kind of music, but he was mixing it with all these, you know, Happenings 10 Years Time by Yardbirds and
yeah,
all these songs we loved.
Monkeys tracks. And,
yeah, so that I think kind of drew me in. And in between that, you were hearing the Plimsolls and the 3 O'Clock and the Bangles, whatever was happening in town. I couldn't tell you why Rodney knows this stuff. He just kind of did. I don't know. You know, lucky for us, he kind of saw something in us right off the bat. Like Roy was saying, we weren't. It was 10 minutes after we dropped off the tape that we were driving back. And,
yeah, we couldn't believe it. We literally couldn't believe it. And he was coming out of his punk he was coming out of his punk phase and going more into his 60s phase. I mean, because when he answered the door, he still had, you know, his spiky hair, and pretty quickly after that, he had the bowl haircut.
That's right.
Wow.
You know, and he played, I mean, he got very much into playing all those bands. You know, he played a lot of the Pandoras. He played the Bangles a lot, you know. So he always championed, and he always championed LA bands. That's another, you know, thing.
Right.
Very cool.
It changed, I mean, it changed everything. That's when we got gigs. That's when we got Greg Shaw came into our lives, and it just literally overnight changed everything.
Nice. So that's a good segue for me, because my next question, I wanted to talk about Greg Shaw and the impact that he had on the band. And you guys mentioned that playing at Madame Wong's to your brother, and somebody came up and said that Greg wanted to sign you. Can you tell us a little bit about Greg and the VOXX label and how that was being a recording artist for that label?
I had never heard of Greg. Roy's the one who told me about Greg. He had heard that somebody was coming to check us out that worked for Greg. And I'm like, well, who's Greg Shaw? And Roy's, you know, he's telling me this guy that, you know, Bump Records and Bump Magazine, he used to write for Rolling Stone. So already I was kind of like getting a little starstruck with this guy I'd never heard of before, you know. But, you know, we met him down at his warehouse record store, or record studio, whatever it was. Had a meeting with him. He's a really shy guy, you know, super, super nice. He seemed very genuine. He really liked the tape a lot and really wanted to do something with us. And then we were kind of looking at his roster, and there were all these bands that I'd never heard of before, but he was really passionate about them. You know, he didn't have a lot of money to spend. He was just in it for the love of music. We were young and naive. We would have signed with anybody, to be honest. You know, anybody offered us a record deal, we would have done it. We got lucky, though, that we met him off the bat, because he really genuinely liked the band.
Yeah.
You know? And he was trying to fit us with what he thought would be a good fit for us to go out there and start doing this, you know. So it was him that got us off the ground. He started booking gigs. He even built a club to house his bands, you know. Well, didn't build it, but rented up some space and created this little weekend get-together for the scene, you know, to have all his bands and even out-of-town bands like what we were doing come in and play. He was really, really, he was a genuine music lover.
Yeah.
And he was in it just for the music, not for the money. You know?
I mean, when we first went there, I remember he gave us a bunch of records, you know, he put out those Pebbles records, you know, so he gave us a bunch of those. I want you to listen to this. Oh, you kind of like, you know, this sounds like this band. And then even, you know, old copies of Phonograph Record Magazine. Like I started grabbing those, and because he published that, and a lot of his writings were in there, so I started reading a lot of what he wrote. And he's a great writer, passionate about music, was in love with like power pop and all of that, which is, you know, was right up our alley, and frankly wasn't really a big part of his overall roster on VOXX Records. It was very garage, and we really weren't, you know, and that was pointed out to us by many of those in the scene.
By everybody, yeah. We were in limbo. We were couldn't quite fit into the Paisley Underground because we were too late to the party. And then we were with these other bands, nice people, great hang, but musically we were doing something completely different. And they let us know quite often.
I mean, we were more like, you know, psychedelic pop, and, you know, there was just a lot of, you know, there's a lot of Chocolate Watch Band going around, and like that kind of, right. you know what I call sometimes the junior varsity of the 60s scene. Because we were like, hey, how about the Rolling Stones? I mean, they did all this stuff a lot better, and so did the Kinks, and you know. But I mean, like, we, you know, those are the bands that we listen to, I mean, all the time, you know, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Kinks, the Monkees, you know, Buffalo Springfield, and you know, by extension of that, Neil Young. We were not afraid to like 70s bands, you know, that was kind of a big no-no.
Yeah. We were going to some of these gigs and doing covers of like Southern Man or Brown Sugar or something. So we were just a band. We were like any other band. We wanted to make records for a living, and I don't think we were trying to so much pigeonhole ourselves. I think we put on Paisley shirts and we got kind of called the Paisley Underground 60s garage kind of band. But, you know, I look back at some of the tunes, if you took away the Paisleys, they were just good rock and roll pop tunes, I thought.
Yeah. You know? It's all the stuff that we, you know, I mean, it's all the stuff that I still listen to.
Yeah.
But we liked a lot of stuff. I mean, you know, I like Bruce Springsteen, you know, I mean, it's just, we didn't, you know, it's just, sometimes it was a very narrow scene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when people ask us too about our podcast, they go, well, it was a moment in time, but
it was a great moment in time.
Don't get me wrong. It was a fantastic, I mean, the cavern scene that, you know, Steve was talking about, that once Greg opened that club up, that was like where we all congregated every Saturday night, and, you know, mostly spent it outside in that little parking area, hanging out. And, you know, it was funny because Steve had a really nice PA, but these speaker cabinets that were just like, were they homemade?
They were homemade. They sounded great, but they were made out of, you know, 6-inch wood.
And we would have to trudge them up these stairs because Cavern didn't have its own PA, so. And we always sounded great in that place because we you know, brought the PA, but it was a pain in the butt. And then a lot of the other bands like wanted to like,
they started hiring me to do
Pandoras. They always did it.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's right.
I remember that.
So at the time that you guys start playing more shows, we were just curious. What did it feel like now going to these shows and seeing, you know, more people attending? Like, Jeff and I are just curious, you know.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. We felt like rock stars, you know?
Yeah.
And we played some gigs were bigger than others, and those are the ones that were really, you know, we played at USC, I think, one time. USC or UCLA, we opened for Fishbone. Do you remember that?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, but not.
And, we played. Yeah, we opened for Fishbone, but it's a huge crowd. But it was the first time that we had like a state-of-the-art PA. It was the first time we heard ourselves back.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling. That's one of the things I remember most about playing live was that gig. How good it sounded back at us for the first time. you know, and how we all reacted to it differently. Oh wow, we sound like this, and everybody was playing better. Everybody can hear was playing tighter.
Yeah.
And it really made you want to that was the standard. I don't want to go back to these little, you know.
Yeah, and it wasn't and it, you know, because we were opening for Fishbone, it also wasn't the same like 50 people that would go see us.
No, it was
100 people that would go see us, you know, and you know,
it was a different crowd, all new faces for one, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it was thrilling, man, to be playing for bigger crowds.
Yeah.
That's why we like doing what we do.
Yeah.
Before the Cavern, there was this place in downtown LA, next to the hip hop place. What was that place called? Radiotron or something? And it was the place. It was the Rave Up. Remember
Jerome. Yeah.
And it was downtown, and Steve and I would drive out there, and it was a gnarly part of downtown.
It's right across the street from MacArthur Park.
Right across the street from MacArthur Park. Says it all. And we would get, you know, Steve and I would go get like a bottle of wine.
Bottle of something. Sit in the parking lot, drink it, and then go in there. And that was like where all the, you know, everyone from that whole scene congregated before Greg opened the Cavern in Hollywood. And it had this crazy stage where there was really the drum riser was really high. It was like all these different levels. So remember that we played. Every time you go back, he added something else to it. We call it the incredible shrinking stage because it kept getting bigger. You know?
Yeah.
You know, I remember I met Michael Corcio there that night. Him and I hung out and drank together, and we had this debate on who was the better Beatle, John or Paul.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a Paul fan. I was a John fan, so we were going back and forth on why I thought my guy was better than his guy. You know?
I remember seeing Kathy Valentine there right after the Go-Go's broke up, and Rodney was there, and I remember her looking at him and like being all sad and hugging him, and just a weird snapshot.
Yeah, I remember that night.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Wow. Lots of experiences. And one of the things that we really enjoy about talking to some of the bands from the scene is like the camaraderie and that a lot of these artists and musicians had. So, but Steve, you alluded to something earlier. Well, actually you said it straight out, and I wanted to talk about. So after Colored Heaven, even before it came out, your bass player, Pete, is it Pete Roush?
Roush.
So he was no longer in the band, wanted in the band, right? And you move on to Bob Weir, who's a friend of, I think it was a friend of yours, Roy?
Well,
Right.
yeah. See, Bob, I met Steve through Andre Garcia, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and Andre Garcia and Steve and Pete and I played for a little bit, I think, as a 4-piece briefly.
Very short time. Yeah.
Very short time, yeah. Andre and I were, you know, knew each other from high school, and we knew Andre was in a band with Mike Sosa, who ended up in the Things later, and Mike Sosa and I were both in drum corps together in high school, so that's how we knew each other. And so everyone, and look, it was a very small scene of people who weren't listening to Judas Priest. You know, we were listening to the Ramones and punk. You know what I mean? It was just, there was a small group of us that were listening to other music other than like Styx and Journey and what was going on at that time. And so Andre, you know, and Andre was in a band with Bob Weir and Mike Sosa. So that's how we got the Bob. And Larry Klein was in a band with Mike and Bob for a while. So that's kind of how we all got to know each other. I met Steve through Andre. Andre dropped out, and then we told, then somehow we got Bob. We I think we auditioned Bob or something, and then we played with him, and then we decided to tell Pete.
Yeah. But I met those guys through you. I didn't know them beforehand.
Yeah, and then Bob was very insistent upon bringing Larry in. Like, I remember he said, like, we need another guitarist, like he was like, it was funny because Bob was very quiet, but I remember he was the one I think who suggested Larry.
Yeah.
So Steve, how did you feel about the lineup change?
Oh, I loved it. I'm a Neil Young Crazy Horse fan, so I always wanted 2 guitars, bass drum, with Beatle vocals. That was what I envisioned, and those guys were as close as even since that I've come to that. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Larry's a great guitar player, and Bob's
Yeah.
a great bass player, and I knew they were a known quantity to me from their other band, so I knew that they'd be perfect.
Yeah. Overnight, we were a better band when they joined. It was just it was kind of like to equate it to when 3 o'clock replaced the original drummer with Danny. Different band, way better. The songs fit better. That's kind of how it was for us. As soon as those guys joined, it was for me that was the things. We've had players after Roy and before, you know, but that core, those 4 guys, that was the perfect things band for me, you know.
And Roy, I wanted to take this opportunity now that we're talking about that lineup. Jeff and I wanted to ask about how you developed your performance style, because Jeff and I have talked about when we see you on stage, and you know, in the documentary there's some great clips shared, and we've seen other things. You're like Keith Moon, or you know, or like Animal, you know, from the Muppet. I mean, your style is amazing, and we just want to know, how did you develop that style? How did it evolve?
Playing along the records at first. I mean,
Is coffee involved? I want to know if coffee is involved.
And it wasn't, you know, that's how I played, because, you know, there were other drummers in the scene that would be like very deliberately flashy in terms of like, you know, it's just getting into the performance of it and clicking. And, you know, I mean, I played along to records, and it started out like playing along to Get Your Ya-Ya's Out, because that's just a great way to get groove, because just there's no one better at that kind of behind the beat feel than Charlie Watts.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you get better, and your skills get a little better, and you start going, oh God, I can do this. And then you start playing along to more complicated. And, you know, then I try to start playing along to Live at Leeds, and you kind of have to play like that to get that sound, to produce that sound. And then when Steve and I started playing together, I didn't play to records anymore. I mean, pretty much after that, I played in, you know, just when we would rehearse. And I've been kind of like that ever since. It's like, I don't sit by myself and play or anything like that. It's really a reaction to the music, you know.
I always equate it's like you're dancing.
Yes.
The drums.
Yes.
That's what I always thought you were like. Just this cool looking dancer on the drums, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, yeah, and then there's things I do. I throw the sticks in the air and stuff like that, trick stuff and just performance type stuff. But when I'm playing, I have to do that to get the sound, you know. It would be like that in rehearsal too. I mean, it's just, you kind of have to do that.
Yeah. I don't think we ever actually rehearsed. We jammed.
We jammed, yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Well, speaking about jamming, in 1986, this album comes out. So I'm holding in my hand outside my window. That also released on VOXX Records. And this record has a definite, much more heavier sound than the previous album. So I wanted to know, was that development in style, was it a natural progression from Colored Heaven into Outside My Window? Because, I mean, I think there's some wah on here. Sounds like there's a little bit more fuzz.
Yeah, it was a natural progression. We were heading that way anyway. And like I say, once Bob and Larry joined the band, you start thinking about what these guys can add, you know, what they can do. And I was just learning how to write songs on the first record. I was getting better at it by now. I had played with these guys for a while, kind of knew we were kind of forming a sound already.
Yeah.
And I was heavily influenced by what was going on around us, the scene, you know. Things by the 3 o'clock, the Bengals, and you know, I was really into Forever Changes during this time.
Yes.
You know, that album had a big effect on me, you know, because there were these really surreal kind of songs with these great string arrangements. And if you listen to that record, there's a couple times where we tried it with, you know, synths and stuff like that to get these kind of string kind of things going. But I really wanted to do, you know, the XTC kind of orchestrated kind of tunes. We wanted to do a Sgt. Pepper kind of record. We knew, we couldn't do anything that elaborate, but we were thinking like that. Some of those songs couldn't be played live.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's more, it's first, it's that lineup. It's the only record with that particular lineup.
Right.
And it was conceived as a record, and we had more time, and we were able to think, as Colored Heaven. I mean, I love Colored Heaven, but it was, we would go and we get some songs together, we go go record. We did it twice, and then we put another
Right.
song at the end. It wasn't really thought of. It was our first songs as a band, and we were just capturing them on tape. Whereas this, we were kind of thinking like a record, and we wanted to sound like this, and and yeah. So I think there was a lot more thought put into it.
Right. We went in the studio knowing we were making a record, not some demos or not just a song here and there. And so we had a ton of tunes. We picked the ones we thought would work best together too. There's a couple songs extra songs we recorded that never made it anywhere. They're still out there somewhere. So we picked the best, or what we thought were the best, the ones we were most excited about at the time anyway.
So this record was recorded at West Beach Studios, right? And is this where the Bad Religion Brett Gurewitz comes into the picture?
Gurewitz, yeah.
And he comes in at this point?
Yes.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
we
Through Greg
Shaw he'd been working at another
studio.
Yeah, he was working. Greg was recording all his bands at another studio. I forget the name. Silvery Moon. Yeah, we went in there and recorded 2 tunes, and we just hated the experience. It didn't sound good. And so we were a bit whiny at the time with Greg. We were kind of demanding that he treat us better, and we talked him into doing something else. Well, he knew Brett, and Brett was just getting into building a recording studio. So we were the first band that he recorded, and he rented this space with another studio, and they were actually still building his studio or his control room as we were working there. So, and Greg worked out a deal for $500. He could record a whole record, so we could.
Wow. Is that how much that was? I never knew.
Yeah, he only paid $500 for us to go in there. We spent a lot of time in there too, kind of goofy.
Oh yeah.
But Brett was learning too. It was all new to him. It's him and a buddy. And so yeah, it was. He had state-of-the-art equipment. He comes from a wealthy family, and they were helping him out get this thing going. So he was being able to spend top dollar on all. He had these great monitors and great boards, but he didn't know how to use it very well. He's still learning it. So.
But he had a lot of energy. I mean, he had a lot of.
He was great to hang out with.
He was great to hang out with. He was funny. He lightened things up. I really liked working with Brett. I feel like he kind of, had we just, maybe just did the record with him, it might have been less dramatic.
Yeah. To add to that whole time, there were a lot of people whispering in our ears how you guys are getting screwed by the record company. Get out of that. So we were being pulled in all these different directions at that time. So at the time, there was a lot of weirdness going on with that whole situation too.
Yeah.
So I know that you guys were talking about pulling in different producers. Even you had mentioned, Steve, on the documentary, a different producer for every song, but you end up with the Spinal Tap drummer producer, Mick Shrimpton, producing.
We did. Rick Parnell. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did he come into the picture again?
A friend of ours. Well, at the time we were, like I say, we had this. I came up with this idea, and we all thought it was brilliant because we were nobodies, and we thought, well, let's get Michael Corsia to produce one song. Let's get Sid Griffin to produce another song. All these people that we liked, all the bands that we knew had an audience. If word got out that these guys were working with this band, everybody that likes them will come and see what they're doing. Yeah. It's kind of, we just wanted. We're already kind of thinking of self-promotion. As far as we got was we sent out word to Mike Corsia. He said he was interested, but I never talked to him personally. But Sid Griffin wanted to do it, and he came down and hung out. Yeah. And then our friend Judy brought another guy. This guy, he brought Mick Shrimpton. He's like, well, here's one more guy to add to the list that was going to do this. But as it started to kind of try to get this organized, it was just getting too chaotic. and he was down and out on his luck, and he just wanted to come in and do the whole thing I think we paid him $200 to produce the whole record, you know. So it turned out to be a financial kind of thing, and we liked him. He was a nice guy. He seemed to know what he was doing. So that's how he ended up. He was just one of many that we had chosen to do this, and as we narrowed it down to kind of, let's just get one guy and keep this cheap, and on the cheap, we'll have him do it, you know. And he wanted to, and he was kind of fun for a while.
For a while.
For a while, yeah. So that, yeah, and he was a friend of a mutual friend,
Okay.
you know, that came along, and he had a lot of good Spinal Tap stories, you know. So he was kind of fun to hang out.
And he was a good foil for Brett. He and Brett, they had a lot of differences.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I can imagine that environment being strange for recording.
But we had a blast. I mean, we had fun recording that. I remember having a lot of fun recording.
We did. We had a lot of fun in the studio. Another little tidbit: all the 12-string electric guitars we used Paula Pierce from Pandora's Rickenbacker. You remember that?
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
She left her guitar in the studio one night, and we thought, before she takes it home, let's record all these tunes that need 12-string guitar. And we did. We spent a night recording all the songs that we needed a 12-string on.
You know, I wanted to ask you a question. I'm so glad you brought that up. One of the things that we were curious about is we know that you played with bands that you had similar interests, shared some similar interests with, like the Pandoras, the Telltale Hearts. And we were curious what that scene was like with these other bands. Like, was there that camaraderie where, you know, oh, Paula left her guitar. Okay, we're going to, you know,
well,
that in.
Yeah, I mean, there were some. I mean, I can tell you about some great parties that we had at. You know, we had our manager for a while, Lori Spilka, and she used to have these parties, and all the bands would show up. I think it was when, for some reason, it was in between when the Rave Up closed down and the Cavern opened up, and then there got to be a thing where just all the same bands would gather, you know, and try to outdress each other. And it was, you know, we were all in our late teens and early 20s. And then in between those clubs, there was a lot of parties. We'd go to different parties, and they'd get quite wild.
Yeah, you know, if there wasn't a gig that one of the bands was playing at, there was a party going on. So we were busy doing something every weekend.
Yeah.
Either going to party where they were at, or going to see another band that all the other bands were going to see.
Yeah.
And we were definitely very close with the Pandoras. We played a lot of gigs with those guys. We, even outside of the big parties, we still kind of hung out with them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Melanie and I hung out, you know, quite a bit together.
Yeah.
You know, I was with Melanie when we ran into Kim, and when Kim joined the band. So imagine.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Yeah, we were at a vintage clothing store in Costa Mesa, and it was right before, because Kim's first show was at Fender's Ballroom, right?
The night we played, we opened for him. Yeah,
we opened for him at Fender's Ballroom, and that was a you know, ballroom in Long Beach, and it was a Rodney show. Rodney introduced us. Rodney introduced all the bands, and that was the first gig Kim played. But yeah, we were all close. We'd all go out. We'd be at parties together. Like I said, you know, Paula would always like somehow convince Steve to bring his PA to the Cavern and charge those up and do sound for them. So yeah, there was a lot of, look, we were all, you know, we all had, you know, shared interests. And we were all young, and it was a great time.
Yeah.
I only got to see the things once, and it was you guys were playing, the Pandoras were playing. It was at UCSD in San Diego. I don't remember what the venue was, but there was tons of people in this place. It was an unusual setup.
In La Jolla? In
La Jolla.
Trident Pub.
Is that what the name of it was?
Yeah. That was your last gig, Roy.
That was my last gig.
Oh,
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
was an
Oh
awesome
wow.
show.
Yeah, that was a great show. That was the only time that I got to see you
You were
guys
an
play.
excellent.
It was amazing. That place was packed out and everybody was into it.
I remember that show. That was a blast. It was bittersweet because we knew Roy was leaving, but we had a blast.
We had a blast. Yeah, that was. I mean, that we went out with a bang. That was a great show. I actually forgot that we were playing with the Pandoras, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, look, the Pandoras they were the first band that we actually had a proper gig with. I mean, outside of like the Ice House and that one show at the Music Machine, and that was the Pandoras with Gwen and Bambi and Casey.
Mm-hmm.
That was before the change.
Right.
Yeah.
That was like an early gig. I think it was right after the whole Rodney thing.
We never played with the original lineup. It was with Melanie and whoever came afterwards. But yeah, you're right. That was the first proper gig we had with those guys.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea that was your last show, Roy.
Yeah, you saw.
Good thing you rode home with me that night, man.
Yeah.
Larry Klein was so mad at him, he was going to drop him off the freeway on the way home.
Larry Klein attacked me.
So you guys,
I remember he told me his plan. He was going to drop you off. So I secretly went and grabbed you so you'd get home okay.
Yeah, he.
So you guys knew before playing that show that it was going to be the last show with.
Oh yeah. No, Roy came to me a couple weeks beforehand, and he did the right thing. He stuck out the gigs that we had to play. He got offered a good gig with Red Cross. Couldn't blame him. We were mad. We got over it. But yeah, a couple of the guys in the band were pretty uptight, and it was still raw. We just learned that he was leaving, and things were starting to happen.
Yeah.
Larry, our other guitar player, he was really bummed out. But he had told me he was gonna do it too. He was gonna give Roy a ride home and drop him off, about 100 miles from the top.
I wasn't gonna get in the car with him that night anyway. There was no way that was gonna happen. Yeah. And then Mike joined the band, and like, Mike was my best friend in high school.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like literally through Mike is like how I met all these guys.
Yeah, Mike was a good guy, but he was the wrong guy for my teams anyway.
Yeah, I mean he was very much a four on the floor.
He didn't listen to my strum, man.
Punk rock guy.
He wouldn't listen to me strum my guitar.
What?
He wouldn't listen to my strum.
Okay, so just briefly, so Roy leaves the band, and then this record comes out. On Epitaph. So
second Epitaph released.
Oh, is that right?
That was the second Epitaph album.
So Epitaph was owned by Brett Gerwich that we were talking about earlier, right?
Right.
So how did this record come about? Steve, it sounds like you're not super thrilled with the record.
Well, I wasn't super thrilled with the band at the time. There was a lot going on. I had gotten some, bad arguments with Greg Shaw at VOXX, and Roy had left, and we struggled. Mike was the second drummer actually who replaced Roy. I played with a guy named Rick for a little while before that.
Oh, I forgot.
I was just disappointed with what was happening. The band just wasn't sounding like it was, And we really tried to keep it going, and there was a lot of momentum, when Outside My Window came out. So I went along, I really tried to put an effort into it. But that album, there were my tunes, but it was Larry's record. Larry's the one that drove that whole project. He's the one that got me, dragged me down to the studio, and he's the one that hooked up with Brett and convinced me to sign with Brett and leave Greg. And there's just a lot. There's a lot going on personally for me at the time. Like I say, a couple times I recorded and I knew I had really bad dead strings, and I just was too lazy to replace them before recording. And if you hear the demos and some of the songs Roy played demos on, and even Rick, the replacement drummer, they were better. They had a better groove. That if you listen to drums, and at that time, Brett was really into recording drums. So it was a very drum heavy record. If you listen, the drums sound a little bit in front of everything to me. you know. And Mike, we were following Mike. Mike wasn't following us. Now that's my problem with that record. It's very fast. It's very Mike driven, and it's me trying to play to Mike. You know, that's how I hear it.
There's some really good songs on that album.
There are.
There's a lot of good songs on that album. Yeah, but that's the kind of drummer Mike was, though. I mean, Mike, you know, kind of drove every band that he was in, and yeah, that was
And I don't know if you remember, but we had a bunch of different songs ready for that third record that if you were with us, we were going to do. And I was still thinking in that, you know, Sgt. Pepper kind of mold. And I had to throw all that out the door with Mike. None of those songs worked. So a lot of those songs were just 2-chord kind of punkish kind of, you know, kind of tunes.
So what would have the third record have sounded like if Roy didn't leave the band?
Oh, we'd be famous. Yeah. I have a lot of what if moments about all that, but you know, we would have had a better record. That's what I would thought, you know. And some of the demos we did beforehand, even just in my garage, I thought were better sounding, better songs, maybe not better sounding, but better songs.
Well, at that point, we had that 4-track kind of nailed down. I mean, when we did Seems to Be Raining, that was almost like the first, wasn't that one of the first 4 tracks we did?
Oh, yeah, easily one of the first. That was me learning how to use it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is that all you? That's all you, isn't it?
Yeah, I was wondering when you were going to remember.
That is all you, yeah. That's right. That's all Steve.
Yeah.
Drums included?
What's that?
Drums, even the drums?
Even the drums.
Yeah, I did. That was a song. Oh, I used to do a lot of that. I used to kind of, and if you listen, I'm not playing very well. And that's what was surprising why Rodney played it. But it does have kind of a garage feel. But I would do that, and I'd bring them to rehearsal and say, "This is how the song goes." And then those guys would, you know, they'd get the structure of the tunes, and then Roy would master his part, play it way better than me for sure. You know. But yeah, I was learning how to use this thing, and Roy had his drums at my house, and I would record these. And these were all first take songs. None of that was rehearsed. I would just record it real quick, and then I'd show these guys what I was thinking about. And I just, on that tape that we gave Rodney, I just threw it on there for fun. It was the last song on the tape. That's what was surprising when he played it. He had to have listened to everything before he got to that tune.
Yeah, because I think the first song he played was "It's Over." And then later in the show, because he played us twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And later in the show, he played "It Seems to Be Raining," and then that became like his song that he played like every week.
Yeah.
But he was playing different stuff, you know. But you know, and then on "Outside My Window," I think what was the one he played on that?
He played Every Time.
He played Every Time, which still gets played on Underground Garage.
I still get a check from Sirius Radio. You know?
Yeah.
Gets played on the airlines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the better songs on that record. I think we nailed that particular song. It's just, you know, what we wanted to do with that song on that record. Every time we kind of, that's actually the way we wanted it to be.
That's got to be a good feeling as an artist to have the finished song come out how you intended it to, right?
Or even better.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, we were really happy with that. My favorite on that record is "You Can't Deliver." I like the whole part of that. You know.
It's a great album.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There was work put into that one.
Yeah, there was.
We were wondering. We know that these 3 releases were released on vinyl only, but you know now with digital platforms, are there other places where the Things music can be found?
Not that, well, there's some foreign labels that I don't know what they've done with it. I know that Lolita Records in France put out the record when it came out. And there was a label out of Greece, Hitchhike, that was really, they were fans of ours. No, we kind of burned the bridge with VOXX, so I don't think they're going to be re-releasing anything. In fact, when I've gone to the website, every band that they've ever recorded is listed except us.
I think we're on their compilation. They had the VOXX compilation, and I think
yeah.
I think Every Time ended up on that, if I remember correctly. But
on the Bomb compilation, then Be a Caveman, Can't Get Enough ended up on that.
Oh, Can't Get Enough.
Yeah.
So is there any chance of this this material ever being released in
Digital
streaming
form?
platform, digital?
Well, you know, I years ago, I tried to get a hold of Bomp Records because I knew they had them I knew they had, we gave the master tapes to the first record to Greg, and I knew where he kept them in his warehouse. I'd seen them. And nobody ever returned my calls. Then Greg passed away, and I just assumed, well, then, you know, I'll never see those again a lot of days. So I've remastered stuff at home, you know, with what I have, but I haven't got the money or even the wherewithal to to try to put it back out there, you know. So no, there's the record company especially is not going to be doing it for us.
Okay, yeah, we usually like to point our listeners to a place where they can go listen to the records that we've talked about. But I have seen vinyl around, so there
There's
are
vinyl, and I've actually kind of been putting out and remastering and putting them on YouTube. You know, a song here, a song there. You know, I've been able to remaster some of them better than they were. You know.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of those. They sound really good. So.
Thanks.
All right, so we don't want to take too much of your time. It's been an hour, but before we let you go, we just wanted to, is there any overall overview or summary looking back at the time that you guys both spent as the things, how you would describe that time period?
Oh, it's magical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was thinking. It was
I
that
have
was
not,
time for us. I mean,
nothing but fond memories. You know.
yeah. You know, it's funny because I remember Greg Shaw saying to me, and this was at the Rave Up, he said, you know, and he was talking about a conversation that he was having with Chrissy Hine back in like the late 70s, where they were talking about this is like the time you're always going to remember, this time, you know, before everything happened. And he goes, you're going to remember this time. And it's true. He's absolutely true. You know, we were in the moment at the time, but yeah, I mean, I think back on all of that really fondly.
Yeah, it was a short period, but it was big.
Yeah.
Well, as a fan, I want to thank you guys for these records. These are always in heavy rotation for me. Years later, I'm still listening to these, so I really appreciate it.
Oh,
Ugly
yeah.
artwork or not, the music on here is fantastic. I wanted to thank you both for coming on the show and for putting out this music that will go on forever for me. It's timeless.
Well, thank you, man, and right back at you. I listen to you guys every now and then, and what you guys are doing is very cool. You know, you talk about a period that it was huge to me. So listening to you guys talk about some of these things, some of the people that were there, it's a lot of fun to listen to, man. So thank you for having us. This has been a blast. And I got to see my buddy Roy, who I haven't seen in several years.
And that's what I wanted to say too. I have, you know, like Steve and I haven't talked in a while, and it was just great to connect with Steve again. So, you know, thank the both of you for you know, connecting us. That was great. It was great talking about all this. It was just, you know,
it was fun.
Thank you guys so much. Soraya?
So yeah. And lastly, in case anyone wants to follow you on social media, are either of you on social media? Is there any place where people can seek you out?
I'm on Facebook, Steve Crabtree.
No. How about you, Steve?
No, Roy's no, you can't find him anywhere. I'm on Facebook, and also I have a YouTube channel called Moondog Records, all one word.
Moondog.
Where you can find a bunch of stuff, but all the things videos are out there.
All right.
excellent.
And Roy, you know, just think good thoughts. That's it.
Yes, that's what I do.
But for our listeners, go listen to the things. You won't regret it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
So much.
It's been thank you guys, really.
Thank you,
And
Steve.
Roy, man, give me a call. We need to
I am. Yeah, let's catch up.
All right, brother.
All right.
Good to see you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you both.
You guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, Soraya, what did you think of that conversation?
That was a good conversation.
It was.
Like I'm just smiling. I like listening to them a lot, and for them to reflect on this band and, you know, reflect on 3 albums. How many bands can say that? We know bands that after one, you know, things happen and they go away. 3 albums happen, 2 with Roy, you know, and it's music that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what blows my mind is about Colored Heaven. That, you know, to hear them talk about, well, you know, we had some songs together, then we go record, then we go get a few more, and then go. But when you listen to it, there's something really solid there. And so I was a bit surprised to hear that recording process. But then you have Outside My Window, and yes, it's a different record, and you definitely see this band kind of moving and evolving. It was just really cool to hear.
It
Really
was
cool to hear.
super cool. And one thing that was super unique about this episode that we've never had before, and I imagine will never ever happen again, is these guys reconnecting after some period of time. And it was like this reunion that we captured in this hour that we've never had that before, because most of the people, if we talk to, are still in communication, or we're just talking to one member of the band. But in this episode, we bring together these two guys who are a core part of this band with Steve and Roy, and obviously have a deep connection. It's obvious, right? And seeing
forward, like an affection for one another.
Absolutely.
You know,
deep.
This is my brother. This is my musical brother. I like that.
Yeah. We've never had that before. We've never had that connection, because a lot of these guys are still recording together, or have been, you know, with like Rain Parade's still recording. With Dream Syndicate, they're still recording. The Things haven't recorded together as a band. Steve and Roy have not recorded as a band since 85, 86.
Wait, so what? Yeah, Outside My Window is 86, yeah?
So, and I imagine that they've talked to each other since then, but it's been a while, and so we get this reconnection, and to me it's perfect, because being a huge fan of this band, The Things, I really love the first two records, and it's cool to see these guys reconnecting, and like you said, the brotherhood that's there. That, I mean, it sounded like these guys grew up very young, you know, teenagers. What, Roy was still in high school?
Still in high school. Steve, you know, he was out of high school. I mean, but 18, 19. And these guys were, Jeff, think back to when you were 18. Okay, because I'll think back to when I was 18. I definitely didn't have any sort of creative idea like this. And what they put out, there was a vision and there was a motivation behind it. It's amazing to me. And that the music, I agree with you, the first two albums are strong and the music lasts. Proof positive. You know what? Everything from, you know, Outside My Window is still played on Underground Garage. I mean, I think that's what's so interesting about the story about The Things. A lot of talent, a lot of creativity, drive times 1,000, and it, you know, just the traction of the band got lost, or, you know, it got diverted, but at least we have these 3 albums, you know, granted, still vinyl, so Discogs it is.
Or eBay.
Also, Steve also pointed us to his YouTube channel, Moondog Records, where he's, you know, been able to remaster some things. And I like really even better than the original, you know? I love that when an artist could talk about his own product in that way.
Yeah. And we didn't talk about what these guys do afterwards, right? So we're talking about Moondog Records. So that was a perfect reminder for me. And yes, there's some of these remastered versions on that he has out on YouTube that sound fantastic.
Yes.
But he's gone on to a bunch of other stuff that's worth looking into for sure. He's still recording, still putting out videos, still putting out songs that are fabulous. I just wanted us to focus on this period at The Thing. No. And then we know that Roy's gone on to, you know, Red Cross, the Muffs, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, these guys went on to do amazing stuff that is definitely worth checking out too. But I'm glad that
this moment in time, The Things, is worth paying attention to. I mean, that's why I'm glad that we were able to sit and talk with the two of them, because yes, we could have also talked about other things, but this project is really something special. And, you know, I want to encourage everyone, you know, because my first contact, it's no secret, my first contact was thanks to Jeff. But thanks to Jeff, I was able to go and listen, and I really enjoy it. And so, you know, the things, music to me still holds, you know, to this day. I like it a lot. And it's just two really solid people, you know, involved in this project. It's really cool to hear. And, you know, the fact that they got to spend a little time together reminiscing with you and me, you know, we've always talked about wanting to be that fly on the wall. And I think we had our fly on the wall moment.
Absolutely. Perfect way to describe it. Yeah. Perfect way to describe it. Yeah.
And I don't think there are two nicer people.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
They're
Very cool.
very generous with their time and
very talented guys, both.
And very honest about what their band did and what their role in it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just can't stop smiling. It's just, it's very heartwarming. It's very heartwarming.
Absolutely. So continuing down the road of our VOXX record artist.
Yeah.
Hopefully next week our plan is to talk to San Diego artists, the Telltale Hearts.
Yep.
So we're expecting to have most of that band on too. So we'll hear what their experience was like being a band. I think it'll be much different than what we heard from today from Steve and Roy, but we'll see. We'll see next week when we talk to Telltale Hearts.
Shoot, man. So let's rewind some of the tape here. A couple of the threads that we've heard from a lot of the Paisley Underground bands and some of the other bands. The impact of Forever Changes by Love.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that. So from Steve.
And Rodney, the role that Rodney plays in, you know, the initial stages at least of a lot of bands.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we have to add into this discussion, you know, Craig Shaw.
Yeah.
You know, but to me, it's just really cool. The one, you know, what was missing was the recycler.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. So
no bingo. That was the space missing.
Yeah.
But
this is more of a networking situation.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And the camaraderie, but
yeah, again, connections with all the artists that we talk to. There's some of those common threads throughout. So,
folks, get thee to Discogs or get thee to Steve Crabtree's YouTube channel, Moondog Records. One word, he said. But worth it and worth listening to this music. Good band, great product, and enjoy it.
Yes.
Jeff, my hat's off to you. Starting off this VOXX series with a big old bang.
Yes.
With a reunion.
The reunion.
Woo! All right, Jeff. Gente, arrullar.
Groove on, Paisley people.